there, Stampers. This is Lisa with Queen Bee Creations. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, and I go live every Monday right here on my Facebook page to do a free online class. And basically, we just sit down with ink, paper, and stamps, and we play around, and we get creative, and I try to tell you kind of an easier way to do things. And today, we're working on this adorable card. And you'll notice this in the back here is the Darling Donkeys stamp set. It's a celebration item you can earn for free. And you'll notice he's right here. But see how his nose is a little more pointy? And Eeyore's isn't that pointy. It's kind of rounded out. So I'm going to show you how I rounded that out. And then how I used Kangaroo and Company to make Kanga and Roo to go with it. And then we're also going to play around with blender brushes. Stampin' Up! Now has ink blending brushes, and they are awesome. And I have not tried them on all of our papers yet, so that's one of the things I did is I brought out several different kinds of paper. I have some glossy cardstock, your basic white, whisper white, and then the shimmer paper. And so we're going to use the blender brushes on all of them and do a little bit of comparison and see how they work out. Okay, here we are down on my desk. So I'm going to show you how I got started with these. And I'm going to bring in first our blender brushes. Now, I would definitely suggest having some kind of paper underneath. Now, you can pick up our grid paper that is available in our online store and in our catalogs. Or you could just use some scrap paper. You know, if I have one where I've, stamped all over this side, sometimes I'll use this back side for my blending. And then if you've ever watched some of the other companies, they have used like something slick, like wax paper or this like an oven liner. It's like a silicone sheet, but it's, I don't know, it's metal or some kind of woven something or another. I don't know exactly what the material is, but this is just very slick because the idea is as you're blending, you want to be able to slide on and off. You don't want to have a rough transition between the two. And these aren't too bad, but like I said, you just want to make sure that you have an even transition as you're doing it. One of the things I would caution if you're using a wax paper or one of these oven sheets, because this is so slick, the ink will sit on top. It will not absorb. And so you have to be careful as you're moving your papers around and you set them down on top because it may pick up the ink that's sitting on the top of here. So either have a baby wipe or some tissues or something handy, or just make sure you really don't run into that corner. So for the purposes of today, I'm going to use my scrap paper and I'm going to bring in my papers. Now I kind of made a mark on the back because some of you have seen Stampin' Up! Lost who they were using for their manufacturing of the Whisper White cardstock. It happened to be a victim of COVID. The whole plant closed down. And so they came out with what they call Whisper, or we had Whisper White. Now they're doing Basic White. And so I don't know if you can see, there's a very, very slight difference. This one I think is a little cooler, maybe a little bit more bright white, but they're very similar. And I'm going to use both so you can see that there's really not much difference between the two. The shimmery white is kind of a shiny, sparkly behind it. And this is a little smoother. This looks really good for watercoloring. And then this is Stampin' Up! Paper. And it's the glossy paper. And I don't think we sell it anymore, but the reason I pulled it out is a lot of people were telling you to use something called Yupo paper, which is fairly expensive. And I mean, I'm sure it's wonderful stuff, but I don't have that kind of money to spend on Yupo paper to learn. So one of the things I saw was to try glossy cardstock or photo paper. If you happen to have some, the photo paper that you would run through your printer, they suggest you could use that as well. So just another option. Just trying to save you some money and some frustration. Okay, for ink blending, the idea is that you want to take a couple different colors and blend them into each other. And I'm just going to start with two. Obviously you could do more if you wanted. I'm trying to keep things simple for you because we're still learning and I wanted you to not have frustrations with it. So I'm going to start out with a little bit of Pacific Point and I'm just going to do a bit. And so I'm going to take and swirl this on my pad. And you can see it's being picked up by these little bristles, and they are indeed bristles. It's not a solid foam. They are individual bristles, just very, very fine. And I'm actually going to start off and then go on. Now this is going to take a little more blending, I can see, because even when I stop, see, the idea was I was trying to get this little dot to not be on my paper, and it actually kind of is. So I'm not real happy with that. Again, and this is something that's going to take some practice, and I have not practiced on it yet. You're getting to see my frustration on trying this out brand new. Another thing is I might suggest you start out with the light color and then move to the dark so that you're not getting dark color on your light pad, like I just might be doing. And the way you get the blending is by going over it and rubbing one color into the other. So that's the glossy cardstock. I'm not, like I said, I'm not real super happy with it. So let's try shimmery white. Again, we're going to just rub this onto the ink pad, then move over to the cardstock. Oh, much better. Much better. Okay. See, so this time, because I started off the pad, there may be a concentration of ink where I started, but as I move on and I swirl, I do not have that concentration of ink on the top. You know, like I said, I went balmy blue to Pacific Point, and if we wanted to, we could even come in maybe with a little bit of Misty Moonlight, you know, maybe hit that at the edge. It's like trying not to be complicated, but show you how you can blend various colors into each other. I don't think I want to go Night of Navy. I think that would be way too dark, but you're getting the idea. Okay. So that was a shimmery white. This one here is basic white. This is the new cardstock. Everything we had in Whisper White, we now have available in basic white. And I'm kind of, you know, swirling and messing around with it some. Now, see, that time I started kind of on the cardstock, and you can see it left kind of a little block. I didn't start off enough. So let's see. This is Misty Moonlight. If I blend some of that in there, because it's darker, maybe it will. Okay, let's go back to balmy blue. I remember off the pad. You can also get those little marks when you press too hard. So we're just kind of inking it really well and then gliding it over. It takes some practice to know what you're doing and getting the right feel of it. So find some scrap paper that you can play around with before you start diving in on a project, because I don't want you to be frustrated. Okay, that was basic white. Let's do Whisper White. And these brushes, because they're dye ink, you can absolutely just take them over to the sink and rinse them out. And it will stain a little, but most of the color would come out. I try to keep a brush per color family. So I have a brush for my blues, a brush for my greens, a brush for my reds. I mean, you get the idea. So if they're close in color and you're going to be blending them, it's okay to have multiple inks on there. You know, I think very similar results. You know, I would lay down more ink if I wanted to blend this out a little more and make them not quite as prominent, but I don't want the back to be really dark. And so maybe you would want to start out with, say, Seaside Spray and go into Balmy Blue, and then, you know, use Pool Party. Or Pool Party and then Coastal Cabana, Mint Macaron. Like, find some that are in the same kind of color family that you think will blend well together, and then try that. Again, with a sunset, you know, you would start out a little bit light yellow, and then you would go orange, and, you know, it would blend out. So these are great for sunsets. So for my grass, I'm going to use Old Olive and Pear Pizzazz. And so, like I said, I'm changing color families. So since I'm leaving blues and going into greens, I'm going to use a different brush. Can you see that? See how they're little bristles? They're so soft. Okay, so again, I'm going to try to start with the lighter color. I'm going to start off and come on. Yeah, if I do a little more blurring over here, it's not quite as harsh. So definitely start swirling over here and then move yourself over. And I'm trying to hurry, so I could be pressing a little harder than is desired. So that could be part of the reason I'm getting shapes as well. So know that it takes some practice and some time to learn how to blend it well, and the paper does make a big difference. So if you're not having success with it, it may be that you just need to try a different kind of paper. So here's Basic White, Whisper White. I like them. They're okay. I think especially once I start setting items on it, you know, I can arrange my sentiment and my animals and whatever to cover up the areas that I'm not super happy with. But I really liked this one. This was the shimmery white. So let's see what the green does on here. And I have a feeling this is going to be the winner for our card. Nice. And you'll notice I started and I went this way for that one, and I'm going to go back and go the other way, because again, I want it to be even. And I'm even blending the green right into the blue. Oh, that's beautiful. Yep, I like that one. I think that's our winner. What do you guys think? Are you noticing a definite difference between the papers? Because these two are fairly similar. Whisper White actually has the more of the marks on it than the Basic White. So that's a good thing, that the new paper we have coming in is actually a little smoother, as if Whisper White could get smoother. And I did not like this one. And again, it may just be that this would be a good one that maybe you could blend some colors on, make them a little darker, and then maybe put some rock salt down on it with a little bit of water. I could see that like flowing out and doing little designs, that could be really pretty. So don't discount that it can't be colored on entirely. It just isn't right for the project we're working on today. Like I said, I'm going to stick with the shimmery white. I really liked that one. I'm going to bring in an old olive card base. So this is 8.5 by 5.5 scored at 4.25, which makes this one 4 inches by 5.25 to fit right on top. It's going to give us that 1/4 inch border. And then I would come in with the stamps and stamp our Kangaroo and Roo. I did these earlier, last time I made the card. So I have extras. So I tend to put a clear envelope on the inside of my cases, and anything I have that I cut or punched or die cut and I didn't use, I keep it with my stamp set, because I find if I just stick them in a drawer or in a pile, or I've got a little cubby they go into, next time I pull out that stamp set, I may or may not remember that I had extras. I mean, I brought paper and ink because I was just sure that I didn't have these already cut out. And it turns out I did. I would have never used them if they weren't inside my case. So just a tip, that's something that works for me. So we're just going to need to stamp the donkey. Now, I don't, normally when we're coloring with the blends, we would stamp in Memento black ink, and that's because it's a dye ink. Well, the good news is our regular inks are dye based as well. So I can use these and our Stampin' blends and still get a pretty good result. And especially when I'm going to be coloring with this color. And so it's kind of like a no line watercoloring. So I'm going to bring out my donkey with his pointy little nose, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp him on some scrap paper in Smoky Slate. Cute, right? But he's not exactly Eeyore. Like I said, this ball on the end of his nose, I don't know, freaked me out. What do you guys think? Donkey's supposed to have a big ball on the end of their nose? Okay, so I'm going to bring in my example and show you that I took the Stampin' blends. Okay, this is my dark Smoky Slate. There's light, and here's the light black. So the black is going to be, his eyes and things. So I'm going to make most of his body the darker, but I'm going to make the edges the light, and maybe even in the middle. And because he's kind of smaller, I'm going to go ahead and do it with the bullet tip end. And I pulled up on the internet, I just went and found Winnie the Pooh, and I just kind of tried to copy what it looked like on there. And like I said, he had the wider nose. And so what I did is I just brought in my marker, and then I went from there to widen his snout. Now, because his outline, the initial color we stamped in is the Smoky Slate, the dark is going to cover that up pretty well. And I'm going to lose his eyes, which means I'm going to come back in and do it with the black. And this is our color lifter. And so if we ever want to lighten up an area and blend it a little more, I can go over it with the color blender and then wipe it off. For my YouTube, I'll speed this up. And I'm trying to stay within the lines. Well, for the most part, other than widening his nose. Gonna look a little more like Eeyore once I color in his ears. And some of what I saw online, his snout was colored with a little bit of pink too. So depending on what you want to do, you might have added a little pink down on his nose. Okay, I'm going to quit messing with him. And then he gets fussy cut out so that he can go in the background. Because he is smaller, I kind of tried to make him look like he was further away. That's one of the things that you can kind of play with if the stamps you're trying to use together are not the same scale, I guess is the word I'm looking for. You can work with dimension because things in the background are smaller. So it could depend on the way you layer it up. Now you'll notice as I'm fussy cutting, I say this every time, but I'm turning the paper, not the scissors. I want my hand to be comfortable, but in order to get the angle I need on the paper, I just turn the paper. And then things like that that have just a little snippet in there, I come back and do after the fact. Because the donkeys don't actually have dies that coordinate. Okay, so I'm going to quit playing with him for now and move on to Kangaroo. And I've stamped them in cinnamon cider, and I didn't have cinnamon cider Stampin' Blends, so I brought out crumb cake, and I think they worked pretty well. But I wanted to make sure the insides of the ears were pink. This is almost a little too hot pink, huh? This is the light flirty flamingo. So I'm going to come in with the light Rococo Rose over the top and just see if I can pinken that up a little. Now I want to add color, but I don't want to change them to Rococo Rose completely. And so I'm doing very light bits. And then I'm going to color blend them with the blender. So as long as we do this while it's still wet, it'll blend those together. And they did dry a little. That's why you probably wanted to do one ear at a time, but you see what I mean? That's how I'm getting a different color than what I had on hand, was to just blend two colors together. Now Roo comes a little shirt, and this stamp set, he's obviously not wearing a shirt. So I'm going to take this little guy here and I'm going to just draw one with the Stampin' Blends. And so we know that his shirt comes down about to here, does not cover his tail, and then goes up to his neck. We're not going to include his hands because obviously his hands would stick out of his shirt. Then I can come back in with the dark crumb cake and color in his body. And again, I want to keep my hand comfortable. And so if the angle's not quite right on the paper, I'm going to tip the paper to the right direction rather than try to twist my hand around. So I just rotate the paper, finding what's comfortable to color with. I'm going to come in with the light and just do the middle of his face in the light. Do his nose, a little bit of light black. And I suppose it could be a dark brown, but for her nose as well. What do you think? Are we getting the Winnie the Pooh look? You know, and this is just one of the things that you can do with the stamp set. This would make adorable little, you know, baby shower invitations or a card for a little kid. But you could also make it like an Australian card. You could use the, what is it, World of Good? No, it's the Beautiful World. I don't know, we have that map set, that masculine designer series paper, and I bet you could make it look a little bit like Australia and then add some kangaroos into that and make a great masculine card. I'm sure our Australian demonstrators will come up with something awesome with that. But from the moment I saw Darling Donkeys, I wanted to make Eeyore. And then I saw that first and then saw this one and went, oh my gosh, I have to. There it is. Now all we need is a bear. Well, a tiger and a pig would be good too, but we would definitely know it was Winnie the Pooh if Winnie was actually in there. So this card was mostly about the blending and teaching you about how to use our new blender brushes. And then we're using our stamps to, of course, go over the top. What do you think? We like her with the lighter face or the darker face? Okay, so now we're ready to go ahead and place him on the grass, and I'm going to stick him up in the corner. So let's attach our blending. Again, like I said, this was done with the blender brushes and the shimmer paper from Stampin' Up. We started off the paper and then worked our way in. I came from this way and then I flipped it around and I came from the opposite side, so it is darker at the edges than it is in the middle. And then, like I said, I'm putting him in the back because I'm working on scale and he is smaller. And I'm going to make sure he's still sitting on the grass. We'll make him like up on a hill over here. Then we can go ahead and add Kanga. Now she looks okay flat, but we can also pop her up on dimensionals. And now we have the two sizes. So we can take and put a larger dimensional, you know, under her body, under her head, out here. And then on the tail, I still want that to pop up, so I'll use some of the minis. Okay, then this was some just punches I had because the punches were quick and easy, but you could also use the layering circle dies to make the sentiment. I have them in a clear envelope. I get these from clearbags.com, and I use these ones that open at craft fairs. And so that's why I had to go searching for those. But if you're looking for the kind of clear bag that goes in here, that's also a cover for cards. It's a clear envelope. Those are available in our catalog. Every once in a while, somebody says, how come your card opens? Well, it's because that's how I sell them at craft fairs. But now we're ready to do the inside. So I'm going to take the little stamp set here, and there's little grass down here at the bottom. It's a small stamp. This is our Stamparatus. This is a stamp positioning tool. I use this a lot when I'm trying to do cards in bulk, because you can line up your sentiment or whatever you're using once, and then just keep replacing the paper, and it's always in the same spot. And then the grids on here allow you to line it up so that it's actually straight. I'm reaching over into my drawer because I have all of these little ink spots They do come in the paper pumpkin, or you can buy the empty ones and re-ink them yourself with our re-inking bottles. But they work great on the Stamparatus, especially on these little teeny tiny stamps like that. They are perforated. So if you can catch the perforation just right, they work great. It's going to give us a little bit of gap in between. But there's quite a few stamps in our catalog, and they're actually marked and tell you that they are made for hinge stamping. And so being able to ink this up and come down and press it will get you evenly spaced all the way across. And then I took my simple chamois and I cut it into fourths so that I could come over here and wipe this off and make sure it's good and clean. And then if I, let's see what happens. I've done this quite a bit with, you know, like taking a happy birthday and repeating it down the side. Oh, perfect. Look at that. It fit right in the middle. And look, now I have grass all the way across. How fun is that? Okay, and then I will oftentimes use a sponge dauber to just sponge the edge. Today I happen to have out the blender brushes because we used those earlier. And so I'm just going to give it a little bit of color down the bottom. And you can choose to make that as dark or as light as you want. Obviously my fingers are inky and I touched it up here. So oftentimes these little adhesive remover erasers will get it off. And I found out the other day, I was in Dollar Tree and they had them for $1. But you can also pick them up at a craft fair. We used to sell, or a craft store. We used to sell them on our catalog. We don't at the moment. And then if that didn't get it off, then there's what we call a sand eraser. And these are used by, I think, drafting people. And I just bought this again at a craft store, Amazon, you know, whatever. But it's got sand built into the eraser. So as you erase with it, it gives a little bit of abrasion to it to make sure that that comes off. So oftentimes I can salvage things that had a little ink smudge on it just by using one of my erasers. If that didn't work, there's an adorable little butterfly. Wouldn't he look great right there? Bunch of flowers, some hearts, presents. You could just plop something right over the top of it. Nobody'd ever know. Okay, so this says hi, just hopping by to say hi. I lined the words up on the grid and then I lined the edge of my block up on the grid. And there's our sentiment. Now again, when you're using the seal, you don't have to use a lot. You want to put a little bit in each corner. And then if you break it off, like roll your wrist to break it off, and that'll make it snap off up here rather than back there, because that's why it doesn't pick up right away. And then let's see if I can catch the light. There you go. But see, I just did like an inch in each corner. You don't need to cover it. So you can save a lot of money in your supplies by not using too much adhesive. This does stick really well. When we were using the snail, often I would suggest that they come in with their bone folder and just give the card a rub where the adhesive is to make sure it got a good grab. There we go. And these are our acetate boxes. They are in our catalog. And they exactly fit 12 little ink spots. So thank you for joining me today. I hope you loved today's card and that I gave you some ideas of things that you can do and how you can expand your stamp collection to have it do a little bit more. So again, thank you for joining me. I appreciate your business, and I do have coffee and cards this Thursday if you want to join me just to hang out and be social, and I'll work on our own projects, or I will be back here next Monday at 2:30 for another Facebook Live. Thanks for joining me. Bye.